Alright, Justice League of America. This is sort of a late review of the film. I realized that the film opened a week or two ago now, and I've waited this long to review it, so probably anyone who wants to see it has already seen it, and it's probably on its way out of town right now. It's not a bad film. I don't think that this is a bad film. I have many nitpicks and reservations and criticisms about it. But I don't think it's overall a bad film. However, I do not believe that it will be a successful film. Just to talk a little business in the beginning before art, this film was projected after its opening day to have an opening weekend of 110 million. It then wound up having an opening weekend of 92 million, I believe, or 93 million. Which means that it is a very good opening, and yet when you compare that to Batman vs. Superman, which opened for like 167, I believe, and the last Avengers movie, which opened over 200, I believe 207, 217, something like that. It's clearly not what they would like to have happened. Batman vs. Superman was the lead up to this film, so they would expect to possibly build on that or do better than that, or at least equal that. So have a fall off of nearly half from Batman vs. Superman says more about how people didn't like that previous movie than it does about this movie. Now, about this movie, let me try and say some of the positive things right off the bat. They spent a fortune on this movie, and you can tell because it's a visually spectacular movie. If you like spectacular visuals, I think you're going to get your money's worth out of Justice League. It's a beautifully made film. It has many spectacular, eye-popping scenes. Like all big action blockbuster spectacles, there's a lot of action in it, and the action scenes are pretty good. They do not disappoint. At least I wasn't disappointed by the action scenes. I felt that it was action on the same par with just about any of the DC Universe films. So if you enjoyed the action in Suicide Squad, you'd probably enjoy this. It's a similar sort of thing. There's a lot of positive things. It's positive that DC has finally developed a sense of humor. Prior to this, I think Suicide Squad was the only movie to really show any sense of humor whatsoever. You'd have to go way back to early Christopher Reeve films or Tim Burton films to find any humor in DC superhero films prior to this one. But this one is the funniest DC film that I've seen, I believe. My son Jacob was agreeing with me on that it's the funniest DC film that we've seen. However, the problem is that DC films are generally not funny. So even though it's the funniest DC film I've seen, I would say it's not as funny as Thor Ragnarok, or not as funny as really either Guardians of the Galaxy movie or Deadpool or even Ant-Man. So Marvel movies generally have a sense of humor. Marvel's Civil War, Captain America Civil War had a wonderful sense of humor to it, and all of those movies are both funnier and better than Justice League. So by DC movie standards, this movie is actually pretty good, and it has a fine sense of humor by DC standards, but it just doesn't quite come up to Marvel standards. And except for in the area of expensive looking visuals, but its sense of humor doesn't quite match up. The storyline is not as compelling as a typical Marvel storyline. And it just, like most DC movies recently, it seems to be a little flat and a little less fun than the Marvel movies. Now, one positive thing about the movie is the Flash, who is largely depicted as a comic relief, humorous sidekick character. That character works well, and he's very funny. I was fully prepared to hate the homeless beefcake looking Aquaman, but I didn't. I didn't hate him. I thought he was pretty good. He at least looks good, and you know, I don't know why they're portraying Aquaman in this fashion that has nothing to do really with any sort of classical depiction of Aquaman, but I didn't hate it, but there really wasn't much there to love or hate when it came to Aquaman. One of the great nitpicks about Aquaman is they rarely show him underwater in this film, and when they do show him underwater, it's pretty preposterous, because when they show him of swimming at a high speed through the water. He's not kicking his legs or waving his arms or doing anything. He's just sort of undulating his body a little bit, and that causes him to streak like a torpedo through the water, and you don't know where the speed is coming from, and it looks pretty preposterous. So reportedly, my son told me, I don't know if this is true, I didn't look this up, but he told me that they are going to make an Aquaman movie. If they are going to make an Aquaman movie, they're going to have to figure out some way of having him swim underwater without looking like a complete damn fool. Because that's what they did in Justice League. They only showed it very briefly. It did not work well. So it's just a little too ridiculous. As far as the other characters in Justice League, you know, they made Cyborg into your typical hoodie-wearing black guy with an attitude, which, you know, I guess it's something to do with him. Cyborg is kind of a character that I don't know really even know why he's in there, unless they just strictly put him in there to try and get some more racial balance into the team, so the team wouldn't be all white. But really don't know what Cyborg's doing in there, but he was an okay character. I'd prefer to see him in a Teen Titans movie than in this movie. Let me just say that. Gal Gadot, whatever her name is Wonder Woman. She still looks like Wonder Woman. No surprise, since they basically shot these movies back to back. She still looks like Wonder Woman, and that's a good thing. As far as her performance goes, you know, I mean, Wonder Woman doesn't call for you to be anything but beautiful and heroic. So you just, if you are beautiful, that's it. You know, I mean, that's her starting point. She's not really expending any effort being beautiful, and she's perfectly capable of portraying, you know, of spouting a few heroic platitudes, which is really all she's called upon to do here. And but yeah, she's perfectly fine as Wonder Woman. The weakest parts of this movie, yeah, it is a movie. Sorry, I'm getting confused here. I've been off my sleep lately. But the weakest parts of this movie really is the Batman and Superman parts. Batman and Superman, Henry, whatever his name is, Cavill, who plays Superman, he looks like the cartoon of Clark Kent, and he looks like Superman. And I don't know what it is about his performance that I find to be kind of grating, but I do. I don't really appreciate him, but I appreciate him more than I appreciate Ben Affleck, who I absolutely can't stand in this film or virtually any other film. I can't think of a Ben Affleck film I've really enjoyed, but he's the worst Batman. He is worse than George Clooney. He is worse than, what's his name, the guy before George Clooney. He is the worst Batman. Val Kilmer, who is the name I was trying to think of. He's far worse than Val Kilmer, far worse than George Clooney. Ben Affleck is the worst Batman. The worst Batman. His muscles are so blatantly fake in this movie, and it's a joke, because every time he stands up, he stands like a guy wearing a puffy muscle suit, and he's like got his chest all thrown out, and his arms are in a completely awkward position, and just to see him stand and try and walk normally in this muscle suit is a joke, because he doesn't look like a guy with muscles. He looks like a guy wearing a middle-aged man wearing a muscle suit, which is what he is. At one point, they actually lift the back of the shirt. It shows some bruising on Batman's back to emphasize the fact that Batman has taken a beating. And he looks like he's about to take off. He sort of teases like he's going to take off the shirt. And then, of course, he's interrupted and he doesn't take off the shirt, which, of course, you know, the minute he turns around and doesn't take off the shirt, you know, of course, he's not taking off that shirt, because that shirt is full of fake muscles. You take it off and you're looking at nothing. But it's not the lack of musculature that really turns me against Ben Affleck's performance. It's the performance itself. Oh, by the way, they recut Batman's cowl to bring it in tight like this on the chin, which is very annoying, because I think they're just trying to reshape Ben Affleck's puffy face, because I think if they cut it the way it normally would be too wide on the bottom, because Ben Affleck's got a wide face. so they bring it in tight on the chin, and it's annoying. It doesn't look right. It looks constipated. I don't know what to say about it. It looks like a bad costume. It looks like a bad Hollywood costume redesign that they did for a movie. I wonder why it would look like that. But yeah, so Ben Affleck is annoyingly bad as Batman throughout. Henry Cavill is not great as Superman. Just something off-putting about the man. I just do not warm to him as Superman. And I should point out that Superman sort of loses his memory at one point, and he rediscovers both his purpose in life as Superman and his romance with Lois Lane while literally standing in a field of corn. While literally standing in a field of corn. I couldn't believe that they had that in there visually, because I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, this is the point where he rediscovers that he's Superman and that he loves Lois Lane, and we'll put him in a cornfield while he's saying that. That's like something that would get thrown out at a production meeting as a joke, and then somehow they actually put it into the movie, because of course that is the corniest part of the movie, and it's delivered in a cornfield. So go figure. But yeah, so evil is thwarted. What else can I say about this movie? I did not really like the villain, which was the rock group Steppenwolf. I'm sorry, it wasn't the rock group Steppenwolf. It was a different, less known Steppenwolf. You know, I'm very familiar with DC Comics. I'm 57 years old. I've been a comic fan my entire life. I'm a semi-professional comic artist. I know something about comic art. I attend comic conventions with regularity. So I know something about comics, okay? I've never heard of this villain, Steppenwolf. So maybe he's actually from the comic and he appeared recently, because I haven't read regular monthly DC mainstream comics for some time. I don't really read mainstream superhero comics. I do read quite a few of reprints of the classic stuff from all companies. But so yeah, maybe this villain Steppenwolf is from the comics. Maybe he isn't. Maybe he was made up for the movie. I don't know. But I will say this, that if you can come up with a DC villain that I have never heard of, then that means that the vast majority of people, including millions of people who might potentially be interested in this movie, have never heard of that villain. And to me, it's a fundamental fact of life that people cheer the heroes, but they want to see a villain is so important. It's seeing the villain get beat up is the reason why they buy a ticket. Okay, much more so than to cheer the hero. If you have a strong hero but not a strong villain, you will not sell tickets. Okay, people buy tickets because they want to see the villain get beat, not because they want to see the hero. They love the hero, but they won't buy a ticket just to see the hero. And they won't buy a comic just to see the hero. You need strong villains to sell these things. So to me, it's a major miscue that, even though, I mean, there's nothing particularly wrong with this villain, but it's just a major miscue that you would try to launch a Justice League of America movie franchise and not have a big-name villain in the first movie. I mean, to me, they should have arranged it so that Darkseid or Darkseid, or some, however you wish to pronounce it, or some villain of equal stature would be have been built up in the last several films and would be breaking through into the main event here in the Justice League movie. To me, that would have been the way to go with a very major DC villain, and not, by the way, Lex Luthor. And here's a spoiler. I'm going to give you a spoiler right now. At the end of this movie, after the credits, there's a tease with Lex Luthor. Oh my God, the same Lex Luthor from Superman Returns, a horrible movie, the same Lex Luthor from Batman vs. Superman, another horrible movie. You know, I mean, and they're talking about how Justice League will return and he's going to fight against Lex Luthor, and Lex Luthor is going to have a team of super bad guys, and Deathstroke is going to be on it. Deathstroke from Teen Titans. And I'm thinking, really? Lex Luthor again? Lex Luthor again? Wasn't Lex Luthor in the first 3 Superman movies? And then come back again in Superman Returns? And then he's in like every Superman movie practically? And we don't need, you know, it boggles the mind that Lex Luthor has been in like 5 or 6 movies and Brainiac has never been in 1. You know, major Superman villains have never been in 1. They've never touched Bizarro Superman. They've never touched Mizzle Spitlick or the Toyman, or, you know, any of these major Superman villains, or the Parasite, or, you know, but somehow this stupid general from the negative dimension has been in 2 movies, which he should have never been in more than 1. And Lex Luthor has been in 5, 6 movies. I don't even know. You can count them. But it's like, I don't want more Lex Luthor as a comic fan. No. No more Lex Luthor. Give us a different villain. For God's sake, Lex Luthor is not even a Justice League villain. Okay? Give us a break with the Lex Luthor. For God's sake, please. So, bottom line. I'm off on all sorts of tangents here. The bottom line is, if you enjoy superhero movies and if you're a DC Comics fan, you could do worse than seeing Justice League. I would, if you miss it at the theaters and you like comic book movies, I definitely recommend that you watch it on Netflix or watch it when it comes out on cable, you know, or rent the movie, you know. I think that if you're a comics fan, I think you'll enjoy it. I don't think it's a bad movie. I think it's a better movie than Batman vs. Superman, a better movie than Superman Returns. I think it's a movie on par with Suicide Squad, so if you enjoyed Suicide Squad, you will enjoy this movie. But I don't think this movie's going to have great success, because frankly, if anybody walked up to me and hadn't seen a movie in a while, I would be recommending Thor Ragnarok above this. You know, hands down. Twice as much fun. You know, but if you've already seen Thor Ragnarok and you're a comics fan, I would say go ahead and go see it. But is this movie going to be a big success and reinvigorate the DC brand? No. And my advice to DC is spend whatever money you have to. Back a dump truck full of money up to his house and get Bruce Timm from the animation department to run the live action movies for you and have him plan out the whole thing for you, or Joss Whedon, somebody who can do it. Somebody who's not a complete downer and a pill, okay, to plot out some live-action movies for you. And for God's sake, dump Ben Affleck for anybody. For anybody. Take anybody over Ben Affleck. I'm serious. Take anybody. At this point, I think they should have Will Arnett be Batman, because Lego Batman is more popular than any live-action version that's been around in recent memory. And, you know, since the stunts are all done by stuntmen and CGI, and the muscles are fake in the muscle suit anyways, if you don't need muscles and you don't need athletic ability or stunt ability, then why not use Will Arnett? You know, if all you need is voice and acting ability and attitude, Will Arnett's got that. And his Lego Batman is a version of Batman that people enjoy and that is fun and they respond to. And he could possibly even bring a sense of humor to the character of live action Batman. So I say Will Arnett should be the next live action Batman. But turn over the whole DC Universe live action project to Bruce Timm, Joss Whedon, somebody like that, somebody with a sense of humor and ability to make these types of action films. So I'm going to wrap it up right there. But Will Arnett for Batman, that's my final word. And thank you. I'll be making some more videos soon. I've been lax lately, but I got bunches of stuff to talk about and to show you. So I'll be making some more real soon. So take care.